My name is Catherine Imrani, and I live here in Glendale in the Verdugo Woodlands. And I want to welcome all the community people are here and all the students that came. Thank you very much. We're very happy to host you here in Glendale. And our host is Glendale Ranger Russell Houck, and he's also going to be telling you what happened here today. It's a pretty special place you guys are in right now. And I'd like to introduce him to you now. Come on up.
Well, good afternoon. Who's wearing a watch? Anybody going to watch? 5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes of your attention. I'm going to talk about, we're here to talk about peace, and I'm going to tell you why we're having the event here at this location. Let's go back a few hundred years. Let's go back to, well, let's just call it the early 1700s. The only people living here in this area were the Gabrielino Indians. And they weren't even Gabrielino Indians at that point. They were just Native Americans. They didn't have a name yet. We named them, or the Spanish and the Mexicans named them when they came along. Anyway, then after that, in 1774, a gentleman named Don Jose Maria Verdugo, actually it was Verdugo with a B at the time, it has since changed to a V, was over here serving. He was a soldier, was a corporal in the Spanish army. And Spain controlled all of this land at that time. And he liked it here. And he was tired of military life. He said, you know what, I'd like to just live here and enjoy the great weather and enjoy all the great open space and make a living here. And so he asked the King of Spain for a land grant, and the King of Spain gave him 36,500 acres, which is all of Glendale, all of Burbank, all the way over to the Arroyo Seco and down to the LA River. This was all his land. And so he raised horses and cattle and sheep and olives and all sorts of agriculture, oranges and anything you could imagine. And everything was great. He was really enjoying life. Then in the early, mid-1800s, as the United States started to grow and move westward, and Mexico started to grow and move northward, what happened in California? Both of them decided, we want this valuable land. We like this weather. We like the agriculture. So we both are going to lay claim to California. And it didn't go very well. And they started battling for California. And in the 1840s, the war was taking place. So in January of 1847, the United States forces were moving in, and the Mexican forces were weakening. And the United States won two battles, the Battle of San Gabriel and the Battle of La Mesa, which both happened in and around the Los Angeles area. Well, on January 11th, General Fremont was camped up at the San Fernando Mission. And General Kearny was not far away from here. General Kearny sent word and said, guess what, we won the Battle of San Gabriel, so now Los Angeles is all but ours. Okay? So, meanwhile, camped here were the Mexican forces. General Fremont sent Jesus Pico, said, go down and talk to these guys and tell them we want to talk about surrender. Because when we talk about peace, there's really kind of two definitions or two lines of thinking that we use when we talk about peace. One is, let's everyone get along and live in harmony. That's one definition of peace. Another definition of peace is the absence of conflict. If you're not fighting, then we're having peace. So that's kind of what this was looking like. So Jesus Pico came down and met with his cousin, General Andres Pico, who was in charge of the Mexican forces, under a tree that used to stand right over there by the gate. And when we're done, you can go take a look at the little sign that shows what was left of that. But it was a big, huge, sprawling oak tree. And they met under there. While the rest of them were camped, they met under there and talked about it. Well, Jesus Pico told his cousin, guess what? General Fremont has got so many soldiers, and General Kearny's got so many soldiers, it would be in your best interest to surrender, because it's not going to go well if you don't. So that seemed like a good idea. So a couple of days later, they went to what is now close to where the Hollywood Bowl is today, and they signed the Treaty of Cahuenga. And that ended the hostilities between Mexico and the United States relative to California. The at that point, that's kind of, so this spot right over here, you can kind of think of this as the birthplace of California. That's where it took place. And then about a year later, we signed the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which ended the war completely between Mexico and the United States, and that's where Texas, that's where the border finally got defined, what's the United States and what's Mexico. So it all started right over here underneath this tree. Since that time, then in 1871, Jose Maria Verdugo had died earlier, and he left the rancho to his family. Well, it was just, there was so much change and so much growth that he couldn't afford to keep the ranch. So he signed a mortgage, which if your parents own a house, they don't own the house, they own the doorknobs. The bank owns the house, and little by little, they're buying back the house from the bank. That's what a mortgage is. The bank puts the money out front, and then you pay the bank back. It's a loan. Well, he mortgaged the whole rancho, and little by little, in order to pay the loan back, he sold a few acres here and sold a few acres there, and before you know it, it was gone. There wasn't anything left except this little 3-acre property. Well, in 1902, a gentleman named F.P. Newport bought this whole area, and there weren't all these houses here at that time. But he was going to build houses, and they built houses all around, and this little spot they kept. Then in 1946, Ernest Basher, who was a doctor, bought this property, and the adobe at that point was just a complete wreck. It was just a big mud brick stacked on top of itself. It was really, had gone into great deterioration. Well, they restored the adobe, and right after World War II, they added on the kitchen and the bathroom, which were at the back of the building. And they kept it until 1989, when the city came along and decided we would like to have this little spot as a park. And so that's where that fence is. Mrs. Basher, who was here earlier, she walked in, or not Mrs. Basher, Mrs. McKenna, whose parents were the Bashers, fenced that off, and she kept that little piece and sold the rest of it to the city. And so this is now a historic site, and again, can kind of be thought of as the birthplace of California, being part of the United States.
Wow.
There you go.